Hello, fellow rosarians. I am so thrilled to be in the garden today. I've been away for 5 days on a trip and I've just been beside myself wondering what kind of blooms are going on in the yard that I'm missing and what kind of insects might be attacking my roses. So I'm thrilled to be out here with you all today. And one of the things that I wanted to do first, we are definitely going to do a video on everything that's in bloom, but I want it to look its best. So before I do that, I want to go around and clip all of the blooms that have expired on the roses. And so for all of my new rose geeks, that's called deadheading. And so you can deadhead anything that's in bloom. So it doesn't apply just to roses. Let's say you've got a salvia that has finished blooming, or I've got heuchera. I will show you how to do that really easy. If you decide that you never want to deadhead, don't have time, you're going to be fine. The rose is still going to thrive, it's still going to bloom, but it's just not going to bloom as much. So why do we deadhead? A couple of reasons. To encourage new blooms. That'll help it to, instead of pushing its energy towards a expired bloom, which if it was one that had hips, and you'll know if it has hips because in the description it'll say a lot of people want to encourage hips at the end of the season, so they wait to prune off that expired bloom because it'll push its energy towards a hip, and then you've got something beautiful that will look nice during the winter for that winter interest. I don't think I've bought any variety that have hips, so I always cut back the expired blooms, and I do that so that it looks nicer. When you have a bloom that has expired, it just looks dry and tired. So I take off the bloom so that it looks nicer. I take off the bloom so that it pushes its energy towards new growth and new blooms, and you'll get more blooms. And I also take it off to reshape that shrub if it's growing taller than I want. And I also do it so that I can get into that rose and see if there's any issues. A lot of times when you've got a lot of growth, it's hard to see what's going on in the rose. So if you have time, I certainly encourage it. But if you don't, it's going to be fine. You're just going to have less blooms during the season. And that's why we have roses, is to have as many blooms as possible. So what am I taking around with me today? I have a collapsible tote, which I love because I can fill it with water in case I'm taking clippings in the yard to take inside, or I can of course fill it with my things that I'm taking out. So I've talked with you about my pruners. To make sure that I'm disinfecting them, I use 91% alcohol. I go ahead and I fill my paint bucket, and I just put my pruners in there after each cut, and it makes it really easy to know that your cuts are sanitized. I do that after every single cut. It just takes a fraction of an amount of time to do it, and it gives you that peace of mind that if there was a disease or some kind of bacteria or something, you're not transferring it with each cut and then having problems with all of the roses. I've got my gloves and I've got a couple of pair of pruners, and I always, without fail, whether I need it or not, I'm bringing out my water meter just in case I'm looking at a rose and something doesn't quite look right. It's got yellow leaves, which would indicate it's got too much water. I go ahead and I check the soil real quick. So this is what I'm going to take out with me. Oh, and I'm going to take my collapsible bucket. And of course you can use anything that you've got. So when we are pruning leaves, I always encourage you to get them out of the bed. Don't just drop them on the ground. Go ahead and put them in your takeaway bucket so that you're not dropping anything that might have a fungus, a bacteria, or something that's going to go back into the roots of your rose. So we take those out. Same thing goes with the blooms. When I've been in a rush in the past, I just twist that bloom, pull it off, and throw it out into the yard if I'm in a rush because I know the mower is going to take care of it. If you look at the blooms, they're going to drop on the ground. I see them right here. And that's fine if the petals drop onto the mulch. You just want to try to make sure that you get all of the leaves, if there are leaves on the ground. So I'll take a quick look at that too and make sure that nothing has dropped on the ground. For my new rosarians, there are ideal ways to deadhead a rose. For your very first cut, all you need to do is really just snip off that top bloom. Nothing else needs to be done. So we're going to do that, and then I'm going to show you, ideally, to get into the shrub, what you want to do. Do I worry about always getting the canes at an angle so that the rain will, fall off of it? Not always. I try, and it's kind of ingrained into my routine, that you're going to cut it at an angle so that as the rain hits it, it just falls off. Sometimes it's straight. They're fine. Don't put too much focus in what is the angle and how am I cutting it. For this first cut, let's just get the blooms off and let me show that to you. All right, so come on, let's go. Okay, so how do I know which blooms need to be cut? I enjoy leaving all my blooms on here as long as possible, but do you see this one? If I give it a shake, I actually want to have my this a little bit closer. If I give it a shake, you see how everything falls off. I know that this one is ready to be cut now. So what do? Is if you look in here, I've got 3 blooms. All that needs to happen here is snip this one off. Okay, and now all of the energy will go towards these blooms. If I look at, let's see if this one's ready. I think see how it is faded, the color has faded. So we're gonna go ahead and cut this one here, right here, where it meets the other bloom. Do you see how we've got fresh blooms coming up here? I'm just gonna go ahead and snip this off as close to this new bloom that's coming up, and now all of the energy is going to be going towards these. So this one here has run its course as I'm shaking it. The petals are coming off. After you learn just to clip off the bloom itself, just like I showed you, do you see how this has three leaves? I could cut it here if I just wanted to take the bloom off, but if you wanted to do it absolutely to textbook, they would say bring it down to the 5 leaf versus the 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I want to cut it here just above it. And if you wanted to do it ideal, you would do it at an angle like this. I'm going to make sure that this doesn't go into the bed just in case there's any problems. But I have cut this one now to the 5 leaf just above it, and it can be 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 inch. And that is an ideal cut. I do not put glue or anything on that cut. I know that I've seen that in some of the literature, but it's never been a problem for me. And can you imagine the amount of time for almost 400 roses, every cut I make, putting glue on the end of it? They put glue on the end to ensure that no borers get into the canes. I might consider doing that during the winter, because that's when insects typically will bore. In my experience, they don't do it during the spring and the summer. It's when they're looking for shelter as the weather gets colder. So I don't waste my time or energy going ahead and putting any glue or any kind of protectant on each cut that I make. If you just want a quick snip about, you only have a few minutes, you don't want to be worried about where you're cutting on the cane itself, whether it's 3 leaf or 5 leaf, just go ahead and snip off all the tops, and then when you've got a little bit more time, come back and bring it down to that 5 leaf on the rose, and that's where it has the strongest amount of energy to be able to push up. So that's just ideal and good enough. So you've got a good enough solution and you have an ideal solution for pruning your roses. I want to show you real quick with salvia what I do, because that's a companion plant that we often use, whether it's a nepeta or a salvia. As soon as you see that the blooms have expired, let's go ahead and cut it back and give your plant enough energy to be able to push out that next set of blooms for you. So come on over here real quick. So when we look at this salvia, do you see how it's got fresh blooms coming up here on each side of the cane? I'm going to just cut this back because it's expired to here. Okay. So here on this salvia, I don't see any fresh blooms popping up, so I can actually go a little bit deeper here. Okay. And then when I look at this one here, do you see these little tiny blooms coming next to those shoots there at the bottom of that cane? So I'm going to go ahead and cut it just right here. And so this is really quick. I see new blooms on each side of this little cane coming up. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it here. And let's go ahead and finish with this one over here real quick. Same situation. This one, I don't see any fresh blooms coming up here, so that tells me that I can go a little bit deeper down to here. And then look, after I cut this, do you see it's got some fresh blooms coming up there? You can use this method with all blooming plants to encourage new growth, so that they're putting all of their energy towards, this looks like a rabbit got this one, turkey. But you can use this method to encourage new growth for all of your blooming plants. So I've got a lot of work to do. It should take me maybe about 45 minutes or so to rush around the yard and take care of everything. But I'm really looking forward to showing you everything in bloom today. So thanks for joining me. I hope that you will hit the subscribe, the like, and then hit that alert so you can see my video as soon as I get finished with this so I can share it with you. Okay, see you in the next one.